Christmas Eve, Mom was getting sicker. I called my wife, asking her to bring Alex Davis to see my mother, but she said reluctantly, going to the hospital during Christmas/New Year is bad luck. Let's talk about it after the holiday. I had never been so angry, and I argued with her. Mom ultimately didn't get to see them and closed her eyes with regret. I didn't inform my wife's family. I quietly handled Mom's funeral arrangements in my hometown, then called Saracen to ask for a divorce. What I never expected was a man's voice on the other end of the line. Sorry, Mr. Davis, she's very tired and asleep at my place. Please don't disturb her rest. It wasn't until the next day that she replied with an indifferent text message, as you wish. A few days later, she came back from Sarah's parents' house. When I saw her, I didn't cling to her eagerly like before. I just kept watching my TV. Go pick out some pajamas for me, I'm exhausted, Saracen ordered as usual, then took off her clothes to shower. There was no one else at home. She shed her clothes one by one, leaving them on the floor, revealing her beautiful body and jade-like skin. In the past, I would definitely have lost control, rushing to cling to her and please her, helping her scrub her back in the shower. But now, I felt nothing. She finished her shower, pulled open the bathroom door, and seeing me still sitting on the sofa watching TV, she frowned slightly and asked, "Why didn't you get my pajamas? Can you get the one with the cartoon print, the one you like the most? When are we getting divorced?" I asked emotionlessly. "Stop messing around. It was so late when you called last time, I was already asleep," Saracen said indifferently. "David Miller, as my assistant, taking my call is no big deal. I've already talked to him about it afterward. Can you stop being jealous?" Jealous? She thought I was still jealous like before. But she didn't know my heart had long since died. "Okay, go get my pajama. I'm really very tired. Let's get some rest early, we can go see your mother at the hospital tomorrow," Saracen said. Her words were like a thorn again, piercing deeply into my heart. I looked at her coldly. "See my mother? Where do you plan to see her?" "At the hospital, of course," Saracen said matter-of-factly. "Oh, by the way, I asked around during my business trip. There's a good hospital in Coastwood City. I can have someone arrange for your mother to transfer there. After all, the medical conditions and everything else are better there." Before she could finish, I couldn't help but shout at her, "My mother is already dead." Saracen trembled, startled by my shout. She looked at me in disbelief, perhaps even wondering if I was lying. Your mother, why didn't I know about this?" Saracen asked. "Does it matter now whether you knew or not?" I looked at her and questioned coldly, "When my mother was alive, she couldn't even see you and her grandson once, and now you say you want to see her. Do you think this insincere act is meaningful?" My roar silenced her. She didn't say anything else, quietly left the bathroom, and went to the walk-in closet/wardrobe herself. Soon, she was wearing my favorite pair of pajamas with the cartoon print, standing in the distance looking at me and saying, "I'm sorry, I really didn't know." After saying this, she turned and went back into the room. A piercing pain seized my heart again. I met her in high school. It's funny to think about it now. We were in the same class in high school, one was the class president and the other was the vice class president. At first, she was always first in the class. Until one day, my total test score was just 1 point less than hers. She came up to me and provoked, "Even if it's only 1 point difference, I'll always be better than you, just like I'm the class president and you're just the vice class president." I didn't know why she wanted to provoke me like that. But my competitive spirit was completely ignited by her. I spent more time studying every day, often staying up until 11 at night, sending her messages asking if she was asleep. This wasn't to care about her. It was to check how hard she was working. To work harder than her for 1 more minute, and then beat her by 1 point. To prove myself. And back then, she seemed to think the same way, also sending me messages asking if I was asleep. Although she was a girl, she was very competitive. We would even stay up until the early hours for this, always thinking about putting in 1 more minute of effort than the other. However, too much is as bad as too little. This kind of vicious competition, without enough sleep, resulted in daytime grogginess. 1 or 2 days were fine, but after a long time, neither of us could handle it. Finally, she couldn't take it anymore and came to me again. We have to make an agreement. We must go to bed by 10:30 every day. Neither of us is allowed to secretly study for even one more minute. I looked at her skeptically and said, I can totally do it, I just worry you'll cheat. Humph, she scoffed. Do you think I would? If I'm going to beat you, I'll do it fair and square. I didn't follow the agreement. Although every day at 10:30, we would immediately send each other messages telling the other to stop studying as agreed. But I still secretly studied for another half hour, even just reading for another half hour. I always believed that 1 extra minute of effort would definitely pay off. The results of the next test came out. As expected, I scored 2 points more than her. She was very angry. After school, she told me to wait for her at the coffee shop/cafe outside the school. As soon as she entered the coffee shop/cafe, she tore up her test paper in front of me, then threw it in my face, demanding to know if I had secretly studied beyond the agreed time. Faced with her questioning, I felt a little embarrassed and admitted I had studied for an extra half hour every day. I expected her to be even angrier when she heard this, but she just left without saying a word after listening. It wasn't until another practice test that she still couldn't beat me. She cried in the classroom, crying very sadly, and the teachers and classmates comforted her. That night, she asked me to meet her at the small park. She questioned me again about whether I had secretly studied. I openly admitted that I still studied for an extra half hour every day. She cried when she heard this. Only then did I realize she was crying because she had been secretly studying until 1 in the morning every day, but I kept surpassing her. Back then, we were both so naive and foolish. I just watched her cry and complain, not knowing how to comfort her. Another test came around. I deliberately answered 2 questions incorrectly and lost to her. Those 2 wrong answers were so simple. I was criticized by the teacher in front of the class and called to the office for a lecture. While I was in the office, Sarah Chin looked at my test paper and knew that I had deliberately let her win. She asked me to meet her on the weekend. But when it was time to meet, she didn't show up. She didn't answer my calls. I looked everywhere for her and finally saw her being cornered by 2 thugs in a narrow alley. I rushed up without hesitation to help her, and I was beaten badly and hospitalized. Those few days, she came to see me at the hospital every day after school, showed me her class notes, and we did homework and studied together. Until we got into the same college. She confessed her feelings to me first, a girl pursuing a guy. After we got together, only then did I find out she was a wealthy heiress/daughter from a rich family. The day we graduated from college, we decided to be together, but her family strongly opposed it. Especially her sister, Ashley Chin, who really looked down on someone from an ordinary background/not from a wealth. High family like me, speaking sarcastically and sometimes openly mocking me as a gold digger/someone just after money, saying I was just trying to cling to their family because they were rich. But only Ashley Chen and I knew in our hearts. What we had was pure friendship, which later developed into love. During this process, I didn't know she was from a wealthy family. I was very disheartened during that time. To take care of my feelings, Sarah Chen, despite her family's opposition, quietly took out the identification documents/papers and got married, eloped, with me. Her parents were furious when they found out. It wasn't until Sarah Chen showed them the pregnancy test report that her parents finally accepted the fact. But they still looked down on/disrespected me. Many times, I was given the cold shoulder/being rebuffed. No matter how enthusiastic I was always ridiculed by her family without any dignity. At first, Sarah Chin would often comfort and encourage me. But gradually, as time passed, especially after we had kids/children, she also became distant and grew apart from me, even having a questionable relationship with David. I tried to save the relationship multiple times, becoming more proactive, gentle, and caring. But none of this seemed to help. Instead, it made her dislike me, and she started finding fault with everything about me, sometimes even directly comparing me to David and making me out to be worthless. It wasn't until my mother passed away in the hospital that I completely lost heart. Only then did I fully understand that the pure feelings we once had were long since diluted by time, and that special feeling between us no longer existed. This relationship had soured, and there was no need to continue. It was late at night. I was already used to going to bed at 11. I didn't go back to our marital bedroom, choosing to separate completely. By now, even being together felt like sleeping in the same bed but dreaming different dreams. The next morning, Sarah Chen and I opened our opposing doors almost simultaneously. She looked at me and paused. "Why didn't you come back to the room last night? Do you think it's still necessary?" I asked. Sarah Chen said with displeasure, "You're always so petty, completely inconsiderate." "Yes, I'm inconsiderate. Like when my mother wanted to see her grandson one last time in the hospital. Like when your assistant said you were asleep at his place. I really tried to think hard about how to be considerate of you. How to forgive you. But I've thought for a long time, and I can't figure it out." I just walked away. As I reached the doorstep/door, I turned back and asked, "Divorce papers/agreement, will you find a lawyer, or should I?" Sarah Chen stood still, looking at me quietly. "Whatever you want." That weekend, I went to a law firm and asked a lawyer to draft the divorce papers/agreement. After finishing this, I returned home. As I was about to open the door with the key, I hesitated. Maybe I never wanted to come back here again. I pulled out the key and chose to go back to my own home. The house was empty. After my mother left, I was the only one there. I took out some photos from the drawer from a few years ago. It was a picture of me, my mother, and Alex Davis. In the photo, Mom was smiling happily and kindly, but Alex Davis looked glum and reluctant. After Alex Davis was born, Mom was the happiest. But Sarah Chen's family was too dominant. They told my mom directly that Alex Davis wouldn't have a good future at our place, so Alex Davis had to take his mother's family name, Chen, not our Chen, but their Chen. They would be responsible for Alex Davis's upbringing and education. My mom, as Alex Davis's grandmother, could only visit her grandson once a month. At first, although my mom was disappointed, she was especially happy every time the day came when she could see her grandson. But as Alex Davis grew up, he was educated by Sarah Chen's family and became snobbish/judge people based on wealth, looking down on/disrespecting his grandmother. For this, I once flew into a rage and slapped Alex Davis hard. But in the end, I was ganged up on and ostracized by their whole family, cursed at and insulted. Even Sarah Chen told me, "You're making a big deal out of nothing." It's normal for Alex Davis to be a little distant since he didn't grow up with his grandmother. Alex Davis had long been raised by Sarah Chen's family into someone unrecognizable. As the saying goes, you become like the people you're around. Influenced daily, he even became distant from me. Perhaps in his heart, he not only looked down on his poor grandmother but also his poor father. In the past, Mom was so happy and proud that I had found such a virtuous and attractive woman wife that she would boast about it everywhere. But after having a grandson, who should have made her even happier, perhaps she was no longer happy. Perhaps it was due to years of depression that her illness didn't drag on for long, and she passed away early. 1 a.m. Sarah Chen called when she didn't see me return home. "Where are you? Why aren't you home?" Faced with her question, I said calmly, "I went to see a lawyer today to draft the divorce papers/agreement." On the phone, Sarah Chen was silent for a moment before asking, "Can we not get divorced?" Her words pierced my heart again. I thought I could be completely indifferent. But after so many years together, how could those feelings just disappear? People are just that complicated, so full of contradictions. I didn't answer her and hung up the phone directly. A few days later, she called me again and said her mother was having a birthday party and asked me to come. I wasn't planning on going, but I looked at the divorce papers/agreement in my hand and decided to go anyway. Regardless, it needed closure. I arrived at the family estate again. In the past, coming to this mansion/estate made me feel a sense of oppression. But now, I didn't have that feeling. Perhaps the divorce papers/agreement in my hand brought me liberation, no longer bound by anything. I arrived very late. The mansion/estate was already lively with guests coming and going. Everyone was celebrating Eleanor Chen's birthday, presenting gifts and good wishes. The younger generation was children receiving gifts at birthday/holiday gatherings. Seeing me arrive, the crowd parted. I walked up to Eleanor Chen with the divorce papers/agreement. Sarah Chen and her sister stood behind their mother. Her lover was also present. Eleanor Chen's face darkened when she saw I was so late. As always, she spoke to me arrogantly, "You know it's my birthday today, and you still act so aloof, arriving last. Do you still see me as your Eleanor Chen?" Sarah Chen stood behind Eleanor Chen, trying to smooth things over/try to diffuse the tension, smiling and saying, "Mom, calm down. I bet Robert Davis was preparing a gift for you, wanting to surprise you, that's why he's so late." Eleanor Chen's expression softened slightly upon hearing this, and she asked coldly, "What gift did you bring?" I smiled faintly and handed the divorce papers/agreement in my hand to Eleanor Chen. "This is probably the best gift I've given you over the years. This time, you'll definitely be satisfied." Seeing the words divorce papers/agreement clearly written, Eleanor Chen's face changed dramatically. The surrounding guests and relatives also fell silent, looking at Sarah Chen and me in disbelief. Sarah Chen's face also turned instantly pale. The divorce papers/agreement I produced caused a brief silence in the room. Then, Sarah Chen recovered and shouted at me, "Robert Davis, are you out of your mind? Today is my mom's birthday. Even if we have some marital problems, do you have to do this on my mom's birthday, in front of all our relatives and friends? Do you think it's unnecessary? Stop deceiving yourself. Our feelings have long been diluted by time, and our marriage is in name only, isn't it?" Facing Sarah Chen's roar, I felt no ripple in my heart. In the past, I was always subservient to her and her family, enduring for so many years. All I got in return was nothing, and their family's coldness. Now, everything should end. Faced with my counter-question, Sarah Chen's face changed repeatedly, and she finally said, "Robert Davis, you've disappointed me greatly today, you even make me feel sick. You're hopeless." "Sick?" I laughed. Facing everyone's gaze, I said, "You think I'm sick? But you're often out all night, sleeping with David. Isn't that sick?" I had never been so assertive in this home. My attitude immediately made Sarah Chen feel unbearable. She reeled back, almost falling, but was caught by David. I ignored Sarah Chen and looked at Eleanor Chen holding the divorce papers/agreement. Clearly, she hadn't expected me to pull this stunt, or even expose her daughter's infidelity. Her hands were trembling with anger. I deliberately asked, "You must be very happy now, right?" "Shut up!" Eleanor Chen couldn't hold back any longer. She roared at me. She was someone who cared deeply about appearances, and I had made her lose face in front of everyone today. "Robert Davis, I order you to take back this divorce papers/agreement." Eleanor Chen issued her command to me as usual. Before, for Sarah Chen, for Alex Davis, and for this home, I would obey her and try to accommodate this Eleanor Chen who looked down on/disrespected me. But not anymore. I stepped back, ignoring her demand. Just then, Sarah Chen's sister, Ashley Chen, suddenly stepped forward and snatched the divorce papers/agreement from Eleanor Chen's hand. "Rip." She tore the divorce papers/agreement directly. "You're nothing but a husband supported by his wife's wealthy family/married into the family in our family. If anyone's doing the dumping, it's my sister dumping you. You have no right to ask for a divorce. Rip rip." Ashley Chen shredded the agreement completely, then shouted at me, "Apologize to my sister and my mom right now, immediately." Slap. Faced with Ashley Chen's arrogance, I directly slapped her across the face. Ashley Chen covered her face, looking at me in disbelief. This slap was long overdue. When Sarah Chen and I first decided to get married, she was the one who opposed it the most and looked down on/disrespected me the most. She even mocked me in front of others, but for love, and for Sarah Chen who was already pregnant at the time, I endured it. But what I couldn't stand the most was Ashley Chen's blatant humiliation of my mom the first time she came to the Chen family's place. She not only openly expressed her disdain but even claimed at the end that her necklace was missing, framing my mom for stealing it. Although my family wasn't rich, we would never steal. I was absolutely certain of that. But Ashley Chin actually found her missing necklace in my mom's bag. Holding the necklace, she loudly cursed my mom for being poor and lacking dignity, and even threatened to call the police. I begged her not to, but she demanded that my mom kneel and beg her. My mom was so upset she was hospitalized. Even at the hospital, Mom held my hand, crying and telling me, "Son, Mom really didn't steal anything, Mom really didn't steal." Of course, I believed my mom. But the necklace was found in her bag, and I had no way to prove my mom's innocence. It wasn't until a year later, at a family gathering/dinner party, when Ashley Chin had too much to drink, that she admitted she had put the necklace in my mom's bag and deliberately framed her. She even sounded proud of it, saying, "I just wanted to toy with your mom a bit." I didn't expect her to be so fragile that she'd end up in the hospital on the spot. Faced with her recklessness, I lost my temper right there and flipped the table. However, no one stood by me or criticized Ashley Chin. The Chin family members all sided with Ashley Chin, AC, accusing me of making a big deal out of nothing. Even Sarah Chin, whom I expected the most, didn't say a word to defend me after knowing the truth. In front of the Chin family, I truly had no dignity. Even after we went home, Sarah Chin blamed me for being too rough, saying that even if her sister was wrong, I shouldn't have flipped the table. That was also the beginning of the cooling of my relationship with Sarah Chin. It's safe to say that this sister-in-law played a significant role in Sarah Chin and I reaching this point today. I had suppressed the slap for many years. "How dare you hit me? I'll kill you." Ashley Chin covered her face. She had been spoiled since childhood, a spoiled daughter/daddy's girl of the Chin family. Even her parents wouldn't lay a hand on her. But today, she was slapped hard by the brother-in-law she had always looked down on/disrespected. She couldn't accept it and lunged at me like a madwoman. Her nails were long and easily scratched my face. Of course, I wouldn't indulge her anymore, nor would I go easy on her just because she was a woman. I grabbed her hair, slap, 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 and slapped her face over a dozen times, each time with full force. I didn't feel anything was wrong. It just felt good, incredibly good in my heart. But I couldn't keep enjoying it. The guests around quickly pulled Ashley Chen and me apart. Half of Ashley Chen's face was swollen from the beating, and she was screaming at me like a lunatic, "Let go of me, let go of me. I have to kill him, let go of me." Watching Ashley Chen's hysterical shouting, I was very happy. I even hoped the people around would let go of her so she could charge at me again, and I could continue to slap her face hard. "Get this animal out of here. Get him out." Amidst Eleanor Chen's angry roars, I was dragged out of the Chen family's mansion/estate. One of Sarah Chen's cousins looked at me sympathetically. "Cousin-in-law, did it have to come to this?" I didn't answer him, but Aide, please tell Sarah Chen that I will draft another copy of the divorce papers/agreement. If she thinks it's okay, she should get divorced as soon as possible. After returning home, I immediately had the lawyer print another copy of the divorce papers/agreement and mailed it to Sarah Chin. 3 nights later, I came home from work. Downstairs, I saw a familiar car. It was Sarah Chen's. But the one who got out wasn't her, but David Miller, her assistant. David Miller was a recent college graduate, and I had to admit he was very handsome. He walked up to me and extended his hand. No need for a handshake, is there? I stood with my hands in my pockets, looking at David Miller. "Indeed, no need," David Miller said, seeing how cold I was, and put his hands back in his pockets. "I just wanted to make a smooth handover with you. After all, you've decided to divorce Sarah Chin, and I will take good care of her from now on. Are you deliberately here to claim your territory?" I asked. His words annoyed me greatly. Although I had already decided to get a divorce, his words felt like needles mercilessly piercing my wound. "Not at all. I'm just making a promise to you so you can divorce Sarah Chin with peace of mind." David Miller looked at me, a provocative smile on his face. I couldn't understand why he would deliberately provoke me when he had already gotten what he wanted. Since I couldn't understand, I stopped thinking about it. I clenched my fist and punched him directly. He was caught off guard and took a hard hit. I don't know when it started, but I had changed from a gentle person to a violent person. My temper was no longer as restrained as before, and I easily became emotional. After knocking him down, I didn't stop immediately. I straddled him and punched him repeatedly in the face. I broke his nose, and a lot of blood flowed before I finally stopped. Get lost! Never appear in front of me again. I ignored him and turned to leave. After returning home, I stood by the window upstairs, watching David Miller downstairs. He lay on the ground for a long time. Some passers-by pointed at him. Half an hour later, he awkwardly climbed to his feet and looked up towards my window. For some reason, even though he was beaten badly, his face still wore the cold smile of a victor. It wasn't until late at night that I received a call from Saracen. The moment she spoke, she questioned me. Robert Davis, are you crazy? I think you've become a violent person now. I asked David Miller to pick you up to talk things over properly. How could you just hit him as soon as you met? He's in the hospital now. Hearing Sarachen's words, I finally understood why David Miller had deliberately come to provoke me. Of course, it was intentional. He was afraid that Saracen still couldn't let go of me, that there might be a change in our divorce plans, so he stirred things up, making me completely repulsive to Saracen and accelerating the divorce. That way, David, her lover/the other man, could make their relationship official/step into the picture. But he was overthinking. My heart had long since died. There would be no wavering. Is that so? Facing Sarachen's accusations on the other end of the line, I said indifferently, you picked the right person to pick me up for a talk. Do you know what he said to me the first time he saw me? What did he say? Saracen asked. He said your property is his, and I shouldn't have included asset division in the divorce papers/agreement. After saying this, I hung up the phone directly. David Miller certainly hadn't said that. But with that sentence, it was enough to make this malicious person pay the price. After all, no matter how rich the Chin family was, who would complain about having too much money? And for her lover/the other man to want to claim property before even being officially in the family? This would easily make people resentful and question if he loved Saracen for her money. Soon, Saracen called again. I didn't answer. I turned off my phone and went to take a shower. One evening a few days later, I worked late until 9 o'clock before returning home. Saracen was standing at my doorstep/door. Seeing me return, her eyes held a hint of expectation as she said, working so late? Company's busy, I said, and took out my key to open the door. Saracen hesitated for a moment at the doorstep/door, then walked in. I didn't entertain her, just took out some instant noodles/ramen for myself. Is this how you live by yourself? Saracen asked, seeing me eat instant noodles/ramen. What's wrong with it? I said, turning on the TV. I'm quite happy now, 100 times happier than before. My words made her try to speak several times, but she stopped. It wasn't until I finished the instant noodles/ramen that she said, I've looked at your divorce papers/agreement. Everything else is fine, but Alex Davis has to stay with me. Okay, I agreed without hesitation. My answer was clearly unexpected. She looked at me, frowning tightly. You don't care about Alex Davis? Why should I care? I smiled faintly. Do you think that's still my son? Saracen immediately asked emotionally, he's yours and mine. Whose son would he be if not yours? Heh heh. I shook my head. Under the guidance of your mom and your sister, he looks down on/disrespects his grandmother, and even looks down on/disrespects me, his father. I don't need a son like that. Saracen fell silent. She sat on the sofa, motionless. I don't know what she was thinking, but our relationship was already over. I said, did you bring the divorce papers/agreement? If not, I have a copy here. Sign it, and then you can leave. She didn't answer. Instead, she stood up and said, let's stop here for today. We can talk about the divorce next time. After Saracen said this, she started to leave. Stop right there. I shouted at her. Startled by my shout, she froze. How low? "Ing, do you plan to drag this out?" I yelled. "It's just a divorce, just signing some papers. Is it that hard?" Saracen took a deep breath and turned back to look at me, her eyes a little red. She wanted to cry but held back. "I just haven't thought it through. What's there to think about?" I walked up to Saracen and looked at her coldly. "When you were having an affair, when you were sleeping with another man, I never saw you so hesitant. What's there to hesitate about now? I don't want to split the property with you, okay?" Saracen pushed me away and ran off crying. As she reached the doorstep/door, she tripped over the doorstep/threshold because she was running too fast, scraped her knee, and it started bleeding. She sat on the ground crying, looking at me with a mournful expression. I really didn't understand why she was acting like this. She clearly didn't love me anymore and could ignore me and have an affair with David, but when it came to divorce, why did she have to put on a show of being reluctant? Was she deliberately tormenting me? Or had she finally realized now that she genuinely didn't want a divorce? But some things, once missed, can never be regained. Even if we stayed together and forced ourselves to make do, we could never find the feeling we once had. Instead of living in such painful compromise, it would be better to just end it. I hardened my heart, snatched the dish/plate from her hand, and smashed it hard on the floor. Bang, clatter. The dish/plate shattered into pieces. "No need to wash it now," I said coldly. Saracen turned and went to get a broom. Seeing her do this, I snatched the broom from her hand and yelled, "Stop acting like this. Look at the dish/plate on the floor. It's broken. Even if you glue it back together, it'll be covered in cracks. It can never go back. Never. 1 month." Saracen looked at me and said, "Give us 1 month. Let's be together for 1 month again. If we really can't go back to the past, I'll agree to the divorce, okay? You really need to cool off/think clearly," I said to Saracen. "I'll give you 1 month, but not to try and get back together and find the past. It's for you to think things through completely. You should leave." This time, Saracen didn't say anything else. She was silent for a few seconds, then chose to leave. I wasn't in the mood to continue working either. I quit my job at the workplace/office and decided to travel. On my trip, I met 2 old high school classmates. They had gotten together and had 2 kids/children. Their life wasn't rich, and they were still working hard to buy a house, but they were very happy. They asked me how things were with Saracen. I smiled and said we were already divorced. After traveling for over 20 days, I returned home. Saracen seemed to know I was back. That evening, she came to my home with Alex Davis and cooked a meal for me. We both tacitly avoided talking about the divorce. After the meal, she left with Alex Davis. I walked them downstairs. As they were about to get in the car, Saracen said, "Come back tomorrow. I can sign the agreement." Okay, I agreed to her request. The next day, I returned to the home that was both familiar and strange. The door was ajar. I pushed it open. Saracen was sitting alone on the sofa. Seeing me, she stood up and said, "I had the lawyer draft a new agreement. If you think it's okay, we can both sign it." Okay, I opened the agreement and read it carefully. The agreement was basically fine. Alex Davis would also stay with her. But there was one condition: neither of us could get married within 3 years after the divorce. I didn't know why she insisted on adding this clause. Did she think I would change my mind? Did she think there was still a possibility for us to try again? I didn't ask her and signed it without hesitation. The divorce decree/final divorce papers were processed smoothly. I received some property and some company stock/shares. I didn't want to see Saracen again, so I spent over a month selling the company stock/shares. With a large amount of cash, I decided to start my own business. In the 3rd year of starting my business, the company finally started to do well. The company also welcomed a major collaboration project, which was extremely important. We had prepared for a month. However, when I arrived at the meeting location, I saw Saracen. The company's business manager/account manager stood between Sarah Chin and me, smiling as he introduced us. Let me introduce you. This is Mr. Robert Davis, the boss of our company. And this is Ms. Sarah Chin, the head of Chin Industries. I heard you even graduated from the same college. What a coincidence, right? Ha ha ha. The business manager/account manager joked and grinned awkwardly. However, Sarah Chin and I just looked at each other, silent, which made the business manager/account manager very uncomfortable. Long time no see, I finally spoke. Yes, long time no see, Sarah Chin nodded and extended her hand. Oh, so you really do know each other. The business manager/account manager clapped his hands and laughed. This is truly fate. It shows that our two companies are meant to be together. Soon, the business manager/account manager realized something was wrong and wisely shut his mouth. At the table, the teams from Chin Industries and my company were busy making toasts and creating atmosphere. Only Sarah Chin and I said nothing from beginning to end. We sat opposite each other at the large table/conference table, looking at each other. It wasn't until the end that Sarah Chin stood up and said, "Our company agrees to this project." The business manager/account manager next to me immediately grinned and said, "That's great. Open champagne. We should have another drink. Get out." I coldly told the business manager/account manager to shut up. The business manager/account manager wisely left. Everyone with Sarah Chin also left. Only Sarah Chin and I were left in the private room. We looked at each other across the large table/conference table. After a long silence, I said, "Where's your young, handsome assistant?" "I thought you would ask how I've been all these years," Sarah Chin said calmly. "No, I wouldn't care about that," I shook my head. "If you don't care, then why do you still care about my assistant?" Sarah Chin stood up and walked towards me, continuing to ask, "Even after 3 years, you still care a lot, don't you?" I was just asking casually. I didn't want to say more. I stood up and grabbed my jacket. Regarding the collaboration, I think we need to cool off/think clearly. Our two companies might not be a good fit. As I walked towards the doorstep/door with my jacket, Sarah Chen's voice called out from behind me, "It's already been 3 years." I turned back to look at Sarah Chen. A tear slid down Sarah Chen's cheek. She looked at me and said, "Isn't that enough? You've punished me for 3 years, isn't that enough?" Hearing her words, I couldn't imagine that she would just see all of this as a punishment for her mistakes. "Can you forgive me now?" Sarah Chen walked up to me again and said, "These years, I've been in pain and regretted what I did every moment. I'm sorry for what I did to you. Please forgive me and come back to me, okay?" She reached out her hand to me. I was silent for a moment, then turned and left. "Maybe in another 3 years, you won't be in so much pain anymore."